The Mackay district on the central Queensland coast remains the home of some 10,000 descendants of South Sea Islanders transported to Australia in the 19th century, transported to work as labourers in the cane fields. This is the little-known story of a people taken from their island homes during Australia's early involvement with the slave trade.
Beattie turned to show the scars that could still be seen on his back. He told how, on one small sugarcane plantation, the manager had made the islanders work from dawn to dusk and even into the night. He had hit them with sticks to make them work harder. When Beattie had protested, he'd been flogged with a whip. It was not the pain that mattered, said Beattie, but he looked at me as though I was less than a man. He called me Kanaka. Kanaka? Said Walani, puzzled. What is this word Kanaka? It is a word in one of the islands that just means man. But the way he said it was as though he thought I was less than a man. My father was kidnapped by the slavers in 1883. He was 13 then, and he was brought over in a slaving vessel and taken to Mackay and was taken immediately to work in the fields. My father's island was the island of Ambrym, and Ambrym is one of the 78 islands of the New Hebrides.
The islanders were taken not only from the New Hebrides, now called Vanuatu, but from New Caledonia, New Guinea and the Solomon Islands.
Me, first born now, I'm born, on kita taken everyone home. City limol kita normal white sun, only istaf long sun, only layang long kita camp, only istaf long sun bis, she become taken on kita. Finish, on kita, every people belong me, on kita taken finish, city lim, not come back again.
An old islander tells the story of villages and their chief, tricked by the white slave traders into boarding a schooner off his island of Bellona in the Solomons.
They went to the ship, and the people who were on the beach waiting for them thought they were just going there to the ship to either exchange some goods for some maybe fishing hooks and knives and things like that, and that they would come back. But when the boat returned, they brought back axes and knives and a lot of other things without those people. So then the people on the beach realized that those people on the ship are now going to leave. Apart from the people who were taken away by this schooner, these people who tried to rescue the chief also disappeared.
I came here to find my father, Taro. The bad men took him from the island. The blackbirders? Marani nodded. He had heard this name applied to the white men who kidnapped islanders. He caught them as they might catch the caged birds, who used the words black and Kanaka as though they were animals to be taken and harnessed and driven to exhaustion point. Blackbirders.
Of the 62,000 islanders taken from the islands between 1863 and 1904, some 15,000 died within their first year. Death came aboard the ship as a result of riots, poor diet, dysentery and neglect. On arrival, the islanders were auctioned to the sugar plantation owners. The women fetched up to 3 times more than did the average worker, sometimes as much as £20.
Certainly the women worked in houses as domestics. My Aunt Kate worked in a house in Mackay as a domestic, but there were also many women worked in the fields. Many women had their babies in the field. Conditions were very hard. First of all, here was a people who were not accustomed to working consistently and hard, and they'd come from villages where they were self-sufficient and worked and collected food when it was necessary. So they had to become accustomed to a new culture, working from sun up to sundown, and conditions were extremely rough. They were given nail boots to work in and flannels and dungaree trousers. Many people died and were buried just in common graves.
I mean, the people, they believe that those people died in the plantation because the gods abandoned them, because they were breaking all these rules, you know, the religious rules and so on.
Only some sen, only futum long neck, leg, only work. Every people only holy monk to come sugarcane. Every sen, 1 man, 1 sen, long leg.
They were working in the field, and they were very thirsty, but the overseers or the people who look after them would not give them any water. Every time they asked for water, they would use, they say, what the same sort of thing that they would use to make a horse run. They used that to whip them, make them work.
Often as the men toiled in the blazing heat, there was nothing to drink except the pools of water on the ground. These were usually dirty and evil-smelling because the water had sometimes drained from manure-covered fields. But one had to drink. More men became sick. Some said it was caused by the food, black tea and lumpy bread.
Eventually, the Kanaka labourers were paid for their work, the same wage, unvaryingly for 40 years. The islanders worked hard clearing land as well as cutting cane, pioneering the area and so helping to build its wealth.
People say you can't call it slavery, you know, they were paid 2 and 6 a month. Well, those are the very people I should like to see work in the cane fields for 2 and 6 a month, or most of the time nothing.
In 1901, the Federation of Australian Colonies became a reality, and with it, the concept of a white Australia. One of the first pieces of legislation passed was the Pacific Labourers Act, designed to halt the flow of islanders into Australia. It also legislated that, apart from a few exceptions, the island workers were to be deported by the end of 1906. Kicking tens of thousands of these people out of their homes after 40 years surely ranks as one of the most heartless acts in Australia's history. As a result, families were split up, parents and children, brothers and sisters, some separated forever.
Deportation had a rather depressing effect on the people. I can only remember as a very young child my mother and father talking about their friends who were deported, and my mother and father going down to the wharf to say goodbye to some of the men who were being taken back to the islands. And she often talked about the terrible sadness and the sorrow that the people were suffering. And those, of course, who were married, like my father, were permitted to stay, but others went. Certainly there were some who were rather excited about the idea of going back to their own kith and kin, but others had been here for years and years, had come as young children like my father, and had become accustomed to living in that particular environment in Queensland. And that was very hard. It was very distressing.
Those who evaded the deportation orders, about 1,500, eked out a living from the land, forbidden to work at the trade they knew best. But they survived, and for the descendants, the memories of those times still live.
When I was down there in Australia, when I was a boy, I said, and I went to school, in the English schools, I thought, oh, you rubbish people. I joined the football teams, and when I was in them football teams, I played to kill, because I said, you hurt my grandfather, I kill you now. But today, after these 100 years, it's a changing scene. Yes, the white man is, and us will grow together now.
During 1988, when white Australians were busy celebrating their 200 years of settlement, and Indigenous black Australians were mourning their invasion,
What do we want? Now. When do we want him? Now.
There was a commemoration of another kind. At the invitation of Noel Fatnauna, a group of Solomon Islanders came to Mackay to take part in a ceremony marking his people's contribution to Queensland's prosperity. This included a reenactment of the first arrival of slave ships up the Pioneer River more than a century ago. It was an acknowledgement of an often ignored part of our history, Australia's brief involvement with the slave trade.
Solomon Islanders were not approved for work in Queensland until 1870. Look at it, that government ladies, they don't even want to come up.
The government doctor here inspects the islanders and judges their fitness before being handed over to the sugar plantation owners.
I don't think in the 1860s the Mayor of Mackay would have come down to the river here to welcome the arrival of the South Sea Island labourers. So I think we're rectifying perhaps a mistake in history in doing it here today, because as Dr. Moore said, it's not a celebration, but I would like to think that it is a tribute to the contribution that the South Sea Island people have made to Mackay, the great efforts that they've made here to build our society, the continued efforts
in
that they're
1870,
making.
the first Solomon Islanders left their island homes, taken to work in Queensland. It is true that some of us were kidnapped, but many more came to Queensland in a spirit of adventure and to get...
We feel at home, everybody of us, every one of us. We all feel at home because we know they still keep the customs. We are one people. And our friends here in this place, what color? We all meet and we feel that we are one people.
Daming meeting sa people bulong Fatnauna na nomba. But meet arrive long Mackay. Lots. Village here, stuck people, black people. Time Sabbath, me will come long shoes. Every black man come. Cry.
Australian people didn't realise that there were three types of black people resident in this country. Not for the first 100 years, there was only one. But then, after a while, government legislation and boundaries changing and one thing and another, then there was another one, and that's the Torres Strait Islanders. And then next thing, the South Pacific Islanders arrived here 100 years ago, and we were all lumped together as one people, black people. And having no identity.
The Melanesian Australians today are having the problem which the Aboriginal people had, say, about 15 years ago or so, before tertiary education was available to Aborigines. Those who spoke on their behalf were the anthropologists and the historians. And now, of course, the Aboriginal people are telling their own stories. So it's now time for the Melanesians to tell their own stories and to write them.
You can't go back to your old ways. You can refer to them and remember them. And as I always said, anybody that got no history got no memory.
In search of their history, Noel and his family, like an increasing number of Melanesian Australians, went back to the land of their forefathers. To many, Guadalcanal recalls the Battle of the Coral Sea, a crucial turning point in World War II in the fight to control the Pacific. For Noel and his family, it was their way home. The visit of the Fatnauna family in 1988 coincided with the Solomon Islands celebration of its 10th anniversary of independence.
The sea has been separating us for all those years. It's not like you can go home, you know, drive a car home or walk about home. But the sea separated us, and we didn't know where we came from. We'd been a lost, forgotten, lost people. All these years that we lived down in Queensland, we had very little communication. We knew we had relatives here, but we didn't know where they were, and you didn't know where we were, and no letter writing, no communication whatsoever. And if I didn't come back here, maybe we would never have heard of our family again. We would have disappeared completely, and that's has happened in this world. You know that I go down in the town, and I watch the people come by, and in those people that come by, I can see the likeness of people who still live in Australia. And I look and I say, here's my father coming. Here's my brother Chris coming. And I see another one and I said, yeah, here's my sister coming. Integrate into white men's ways is very hard. White people are very hard. They only let you in if you want to, if they want to. If they don't want to let you in, they can block you out like that, brother. I don't have to integrate here because I'm in my right society. This is my home. This is my land. These are my people.
Noel was very keen that his daughter and grandson learn some of the local customs.
Just a few minutes walk and we'll reach the garden. a sweet potato which we used to sell it in the market. And there's lots of cassava over there and banana and sugarcane. Do you grow it in your home?
Yeah. We grow a lot more bananas, but only about just here, just that much.
We haven't got big land like what you've got.
Yeah.
We've only got
small land, yeah?
And you have to do it in the country.
Yeah.
On some of the land that my granddad owns in the country.
You know when you take your sweet potatoes to the markets?
Yeah.
Is it what, every day or once?
No, once a week. Or...
Do you go in with your father and mother? Or?
No, my mother and father only.
Only?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Or any special reason, like is that not custom or tradition or anything? Or
no, it's traditional.
That only mum and dad and the children stay home?
Yeah.
And when do you harvest this now?
After 3 months. After 3 months.
When you dig all of it up?
Yeah.
And then replant?
Yeah, replant again.
We make it a plot. And then we mark it. This is for next month and the other for next 2 months.
The young Melanesian Australians were shown how to prepare a kwabi, a village meal: chicken, taro, yams, sweet potato, cooked upon hot rocks and smothered in banana leaves.
When you see the attitude that my grandson has had, he said to me the other day, he said, we were talking before we slept, and he said, I said, what do you think of these people now, my son? He said, Granddad, when I came here, he said, almost made me feel as if I was a white man. He said, I didn't know who I was. But he said, I know who I am now. He said, I know who I am. The feeling of being wanted is, I can't express it today. You know, the way we've been treated here, you see. I sit here in this house and hundreds of people come every day to talk to me and to my wife and to my children. It's very important to us that we've been living so far away and now we're here today as one people.